we're live.
All right. Yeah, he said we're going to be skipping the intro tonight. So this is our anniversary show, our second year anniversary for the paranormal. We've actually been doing the podcasts since 2017, and in 2019 we decided to change format. Went to the paranormal. 2020, when COVID hit, kind of screwed everybody and got us all messed up. So because of that, Joe and I started doing our interviews with everyone, and tonight we have let's see, 7 of our guests up here. We've got Beth, Alan, and Del Kazmarek, Christy Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal, Jay. And don't ask me to pronounce your last name, Jay.
That's Pachochin. It's easy.
We got Mike. Now, Mike, he was our absolute first guest, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it home on time to be on that interview. But he was a champ. He helped Joe out because Joe had a very big problem with audio.
And I remember that. Yeah, hey, shit happens. No worries.
And we have Miss Miranda Young from Ghost Biker and Mr. Tom Klein. And Tom is a friend of ours whom we actually did a home investigation for. And Tom is from Off the Rails. Him and his girlfriend Molly, or other half Molly, and a friend of his. During the time that we met, his other friend named Mark, we're doing a comedy podcast, and that's how we met him. Kind of got everything together, and they gave us one heck of a boost and a helping hand. If it wouldn't have been for Tom and Molly and us meeting them and becoming friends with them, I don't think we would be where we're at today, because they've really helped a lot, and we do appreciate it very much. And we do appreciate all of you joining us this evening, because this is going to be a very interesting and fun time.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for coming in and meeting up with us here. Oh, goodness. Where to start? Now, Mike, I would have loved to known you were going to pull that one with Dale, because that would have been awesome to go live with that story. Unfortunately, but
well, I'm sure everybody here has a great investigation. That maybe one of their favorites, and I kind of and this is the greatest hits episode, right? So everybody's pulling out their Hotel California. Everybody's pulling out their Hotel California, or everybody's pulling out their big, their number one or their top 10. And so I think it's like, who's got something that they're like, that it's their favorite.
Well, we can always do it that way. That sounds good. And we could do a round robin, I guess, and start it here with Beth and work our way down. So,
oh wow,
that's actually a good question there, Mike. So, do you have a favorite?
What do I have? What do I have that I can talk about? There's some that you can't talk about.
I know there is.
Wow, I've got so many locations that I can't even think which one would be my favorite. There's a place in Blue Ridge, Georgia. It's called the Tilly Bend Baptist Church. My family is from there, my grandmother, and it's basically like the Hatfields and McCoys. And we went up there to the cemetery, and there's always a witch. Always a witch gets killed. He was doing something. But 2 different families, one came over to that particular church, and they shot up the church. They had actually still had the door with the bullet holes in it. And we went up there. Now, I got stung by a bee the minute we hit the property. I should have known to leave at that point. Did I? No. Got a lot of EVPs during the daytime. It was, you could tell something just wasn't quite right. Fortunate enough, a man that grew up in the area came by, and I kept saying, "That's not an oak tree." "No, ma'am, that's the tree where they hung the witch 200 years ago." That's not an oak tree. You could tell where the original tree had been disposed of and blown up. Well, we decided to go back for a nighttime investigation. I will never, and I repeat, and I am saying this on social media, I will never go back to that location again. So I went from my favorite to the most activity I've ever seen in my life. Something actually, we were standing there at the bottom of the hill, and literally it looked like, if I had to describe it, a werewolf and Bigfoot had a baby. You could see it coming down the hill, like rushing down the hill. You could actually feel the wind. I think I threw up for at least 30 minutes. And I'll go with most active because it was horrible. You could hear screaming. I don't think I'll ever forget that sound as long as I live. And I went around after that, of course, because I'm nosy. It was something that they quite commonly hear. You know, I talk to park rangers, find out if any animals made that noise. Nope, but it is a noise they've been hearing for over 100 years. There's documentation. I'll never go back. And I'll go anywhere.
Not even if I go with you?
I'll throw you to it.
Okay.
But I'll throw you to it. So, you know, okay. I mean, I used, and I thought about it because, you know, Miranda, I watched her. It took me a long time to watch her Willow's Weep episode because I have been there. And, you know, I talked to her about it afterwards. I used to, you know, I told her, I was like, I'll never go back there. I thought about it. I think I'd go back to Willow's Weep before I went back to this cemetery.
Okay.
So I was not a thug that day, people. I was not. I was a baby.
Well, you know, I think actually, I do believe that sometimes if we, you know, that even though we could be jaded to a lot of the stuff that we deal with on investigations, I honestly believe that there are still possibilities of getting spooked or getting surprised and stuff like that. So I could see where your point is with that.
It was a
surprise. All right, Dale, how about you? You got any favorites that you've done that you haven't talked about? Or that you can talk about?
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, I've probably investigated almost 4,000 cases. And I guess without going into that long story, unless you want me to go into that long story, I mean, I got another couple of short ones I could throw in here real quick that are a little bit shorter, which were kind of very, very unexpected that happened to us. One time we were actually doing a private home in Chicago, and this was actually for a film by the Discovery Channel called Real Ghost Hunters. And we were out there to basically just show how we set up, what kind of equipment we use, how we go about our investigations, never expecting anything to happen. We were there. And we had everything set up. The upstairs seemed to be the most active. There were like 3 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom, and we had the whole area flooded with IR cameras, total darkness, other equipment, all the windows were closed, the air conditioner was shut off, and so there was nothing background noise that we could mistake for something else. And suddenly, let me go back a little bit. I mean, the woman that was there actually began experiencing things such as seeing a shadow figure of a man dressed in a blue uniform kind of standing in the doorway. Other times she said something apparently grabbed a hold of her legs and screamed in her ear. The dogs reacted very funny. They ran around. We know that dogs and animals especially can pick up on some of this stuff. Lights would flicker and so forth. So we went in there, and we had been there before. This wasn't our first time. We had been there before. We captured some pretty interesting stuff. And so everything's set, and we're waiting for stuff to happen. And, you know, 30 minutes goes by, an hour goes by, an hour and a half goes by, nothing happens. Then finally, after almost a 2-hour mark, and things began happening that were completely unexpected. We actually began to hear footsteps of people dragging their feet upstairs on the, this is basically a wood floor upstairs. And we got recorders going, we got oscilloscopes, we had, we had the whole kit and caboodle going on at the same time. And you can see the monitors, there's nobody upstairs. I mean, everybody's downstairs, all the animals are downstairs. They had a cat and a dog, and they were all accounted for. And if you ever saw that documentary, there was a female producer, and in the background, she goes, "What's going on, Dale?" Because, I mean, you know, she didn't expect anything to happen, and neither did we. And I said, "Sounds like somebody walking around up there." So after it finally subsided, I sent a couple of my investigators up there to monitor, and I stayed down at the command center, so to speak. And I said, while you're up there, walk around and shuffle your feet. I wanted to compare the sounds of real people to what we just heard. And I'll tell you, they sounded identical. Like somebody literally was walking around with somebody we could not see. And this went on for a while. It stopped. We began picking up some sort of light anomalies, which we later, debunked, because this was back in 1997 when, these orbs, people were seeing all over the place. And, we later dismissed some of that stuff as simply just dust particles and so forth. There were a couple interesting ones that did show up that we couldn't really explain as anything else as, wind currents or anything inside there. We had a film crew of a sound man, a cameraman, and a producer. Now the sound man was kind of the video guy was kind of on our side, and so was the lady. But the sound guy was a total skeptic. And he goes, "I'm going to put a remote microphone up there on that bed, and I'm going to listen to him." So he started putting his headphones on and he's listening. Now I had always told the woman that was living there, because it seemed to interact with her a lot. If you, anytime throughout the investigation, if you want to try to call out to these things to see if something happens, because they seem to interact with you, go right ahead. And she had a very kind of a high-pitched voice. So unbeknownst to me, she went to the stairway leading up to the second floor, and she kind of goes, "Hello, anybody there?" And the guy that was listening to it with the headphones literally turned as white as a ghost. He goes, "Did you just hear that?" I said, "It was just Anita," because I told Anita occasionally to do that. Not on purpose because he had put something up there, but just occasionally. And from that point forward, he shut up. He didn't say another word the entire investigation. But that was a very interesting investigation because, there had never been reports of footsteps or anything like that. And we were able to capture that, capture some strange light anomalies, and actually, be able to compare, real sounds with the phantom sounds.
That's pretty cool. But still, that is funny though that would happen like that. And see, that's what I like whenever we can get a little humor in with our stuff too. It breaks the monotony. It really does. So, Dr. Sumner, do you have any cool little tidbits you want to share that you haven't?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you both for having me tonight and including me in this amazing panel of speakers. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's watching tonight as well. I'd say for myself personally, the most active location that I've been to was actually the old Gilchrist County Jail, which is in Trenton, Florida, about an hours west of Gainesville, Florida. And the first time I investigated this location, I was actually with Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations, and she and I were the only two people on the property that night. So this was a small county jail. It was built in 1928 in operation until 1968, after which it became abandoned until the current owners bought it in 2009. And so it's one of those locations that, to me, if we could say we've had a perfect paranormal investigation, this was a perfect paranormal investigation, because while Miranda and I were the only two people, again, on the property that night, every piece of equipment that we had running was validating every other piece of equipment. So our Ovilus was spitting out names that we were able to validate on the REM pod. We were getting EVPs in the moment. We were actually audibly hearing EVPs. We saw shadow figures running across from cell to cell, and we were able to capture those on camera also. So for us, it was just a very active night. And you know, all of the places that we go to, historically speaking, are just phenomenal because, you know, we get to do something not a lot of people do and have that very tactile experience with history. But for me personally, I'd say the most active place has been the old Gilchrist County Jail.
That's pretty cool. And for people who are watching here, Dr. Spindler and Miranda do work together every weekend. So,
Yes.
so
We've collaborated on several investigations, and it's just because, you know, we work so well together. I truly respect Miranda for what she does and the way she does it, and the historical perspective that she brings to an investigation as well. So it's just been a really natural fit for us to collaborate on some of the investigations.
yeah, and that's awesome because I love it whenever teams can actually commingle with each other and actually do some really good investigations as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
So Jay, what about you? You got any juicy tidbits you haven't shared yet?
Oh, just a few. But I'll keep it going to keep it moving on. First, again, thank you. It's an honor to be on here with this great panel. Like you were saying, Christy, this is awesome. Everybody out there trying to do their due diligence of hunting the truth, you know, finding out what these answers are. Now, I've kind of got the best of many worlds because I actually grew up, you know, more fascinated with the UFO phenomenon and the aliens before I started investigating ghosts in 2007 to about I found the kettle moraine. Then it kind of stopped there and moved into more of the cryptid Bigfoot. But I got to tell you, the kettle moraine is, while I've actually had a lot of different encounters and behaviors of what Bigfoot really could be, I have had a few weird sightings. You know, in the dark, it's more like silhouette, like almost like winter. Everyone's talking about not wanting to go out because it's cold, but you go out in the kettle with no brush, no green out, and the kettle floor just totally white. You can see like an animal without any, you know, flashlights out there. And it was 2018 in January. It was actually me and Mary Marshall. We were doing a stakeout above a kettle where we found a structure. And what we have noticed out there and many journeys out there are those orbs. I mean, this isn't something that you'd catch on photo or video, but actually seeing them. We have seen, they almost look like flashlights coming down trails, but nobody's there. And during this time where Mary and I were staking out, it was dark, late. She actually saw an orb near the bottom, which I didn't see. It's always one of those, right? Whenever we're all together, somebody sees something or hears it, but the other person didn't. Not all the time, but this case, I didn't see that. And before recording or doing anything, we found this big tree that we're just sitting on for staking out. And I'm looking over her right shoulder, and all of a sudden I see what looks like a really tall, big, mangly looking. I can only describe it as a chimpanzee, almost on all fours, but it looked huge. And it was just kind of sitting there like a statue. And I could make it out. And just as I'm looking at it, this was like just like maybe 2 or 3 seconds. All of a sudden, this thing moves behind a tree, but there was no movement. It was almost as if it was a statue on a cart with wheels, and that somebody pulled behind the tree. It was just, I can't unsee it. You know, it's like one of those things that was I recording it at the time? Could I try to prove it? No, this is just me. But, you know, I'm going out there hunting the truth, thinking, you know, people are telling me all the time, hey, Jay, if you go out enough, you're going to see Bigfoot because that's what you want to see. Well, I was expecting to see like Harry and the Hendersons or the Patterson film. Nothing that was going to be on all fours like that. But that's just one instance of the weirdness that's out there, because you really can't identify exactly what it is. But let me just add on, just this past November, me and Karen were out at the same area, believe it or not. And we started seeing these lights again in the woods. And I know these trails like the back of my hand. And she was looking at a stationary light to the right. I kind of got bored with that a little bit because it wasn't moving. I recorded all I could of it. And I start panning a little bit to the left, and this white orb from right to left moves about 25 yards in front of me, just flawlessly. And I am like, I couldn't believe it. Karen, before she could turn around, it moved from the left to the right and just disappeared again. And I was hoping I was going to catch that, but it's the weird, all three rolled up into one out there. It's not just what you would think a Bigfoot would be, a primate flesh and blood, but then we've got orbs. You can use that as a UFO, unidentified flying object out there. So there has been that's just a teensy bit of what's going on out there, but these are the most recent ones that I wanted to share tonight.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. Wish you would have been able to catch some of it on video, though.
Yeah, I do have a Bob Love body cam. Well, actually, they're actually, I don't want to say sponsoring. I'm kind of field testing a lot of their equipment they're sending me, which are going to be sending me a new 4K body cam soon. And I did have it on, but the body cam in infrared is only going to go so far.
Yeah.
Just unless you have a big torch.
Unless you got one of the big expander.
Yeah, I mean it does go a good 200 feet, but beyond that, then it just kind of dims out. So yeah, but I'm still going out. That's what I do.
Well, that it's kind of funny that you're talking about seeing these things right around the time you see orbs or lights that don't seem to have a source to them. Some of the reports for Bigfoot sightings and also for the one that Joe and I have been dying to get back out to, which is Beast of Prey Road. A lot of the reports are that you would see either the lights in the sky or you'd see lit orb type lights on the ground, and then all of a sudden you'd start seeing these bipedal creatures or quadrupedal creatures that were associated with the sightings for Bigfoot. And that's why a lot of people that do go out and investigate the Bigfoot and everything, they feel they seem to have that theory that Bigfoot is a possible interdimensional creature, and that's why you don't find any bodies. That's why you don't find any evidence. They're only in our dimension long enough for us to catch glimpses of them, hear their sounds they make, and then they move on back into their own dimension.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's always possible. I always keep an open mind. When I first started doing this, it was more of a primate, but now you know what? This is why I tell people, because they say you're gonna go out look for Bigfoot, and I'm like, I don't know what's out there anymore. I'm kind of baffled, and but the only way to keep doing it is getting out in the boots to ground and researching.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so much unexplained in this world. I mean, we still haven't explored every nook and cranny of our land masses, and we've only explored approximately 15% of our oceans.
That's right.
We don't even know what's in the ocean, let alone what's on our land.
That's right.
We know more. And the weirdest thing is, for us being an intelligent species that we are, we know more about outer space and the planetary system that we live in than we know about our own planet that supports the life that we live.
That's right.
So it's a really interesting world that we live in. So, all right, Mike, your turn. Do you got anything cool that you've been up to lately, or anything cool?
I don't have shit. No, of course I wouldn't agree to show up if I didn't have a story. So Jay talking, you and Jay talking about Bigfoot as a interdimensional creature. And you just mentioning the Beast of Bray Road makes me want to talk about a particular story that happened to me in high school. And so high school for me was approximately 9,000 years ago. I do apologize if my video is a little funky. I have to use my regular camera's broke, so I'm using a different camera. But I just hope the audio is coming through and you guys can hear everything I'm saying. And if it's
Audio's
not,
good.
okay, great. Let's make sure I'll restart or do whatever that to make that smooth. But I apologize for any video hiccups. No, going back. So when you're talking about the Beast of Bray Road, so I grew up in southeastern Wisconsin in a town called Big Bend, and my sister Allison and I were always into ghost stories. And part of the reason is that we had ghost stories on the news, and when you had the Beast of Bray Road on the news in the late 80s, that was like your hometown werewolf. Like we were 20 minutes away from East Troy. I had relatives in Waterford, just down this, just right. You could get to Waterford in 15 minutes, which is then you're like 8 minutes from East Troy, and you're 7 minutes from Bray Road. Bray Road is just off of 43 between Milwaukee and Chicago, the interstate. And so growing up, you would have that story. You're like, well, we have the Horicon Marsh on the news, and we've got a werewolf on the news. So I don't know what's happening in your town, guys, but obviously southeastern Wisconsin is paranormal as fuck. And that, we loved it. And so, but the interdimensional stuff, I always thought I was a very flesh and bones kind of person. Like if you talk to Lauren Coleman, Lauren is very Bigfoot is flesh and bones. Bigfoot is a terrestrial creature. If you talk to Nick Redfern, Nick is like, well, I think it might be something more supernatural, something that's not, we're not going to find the bones. It's not something that scientists could just figure out. And so I always thought of the Beast of Bray Road as one of those flesh and bones kind of creatures. And I'm connecting this to the town I went to high school in was a town called Mukwonago, Wisconsin, which is basically, it's welcome to nowhere, USA. That's Mukwonago.
I know where Mukwonago is.
Right. So, right. And so in Mukwonago, there was an exit to Interstate 43, like 2 exits down basically from where Bray Road is. And there was an abandoned farmhouse, actually a kind of burnt out farmhouse, right by the 43 exit, the Interstate 43 exit. And it was behind some trees and kind of into this field. And this was still a very rural, like now there is a Aurora Health Center and there's a Walmart and everything. But 25 years ago, there wasn't. 25 years ago, it was just farmland on the way into town that we take on the bus every day. And so on the bus every day, we see this abandoned farmhouse. And my sister said, my sister's 7 years older than me. And so when I'm a little kid, she tells me, she's like, hey, I heard that the kids who are a little older go play Ouija board in that abandoned farmhouse and they call it the gates of hell. And I'm like, I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Right? You're like, oh my God, I want to go do the Ouija board at the gates of hell. So, I forget about it or whatever until I'm 16 and 17 years old. And we like to do legend tripping. We like to do these things called Fright Nights, where Friday night you get a group of us, maybe 10 guys, 8 girls, like a big group of people. We'd go out, we'd go one of these places and look to see what can we find? What can we experience? And we did these in different places. And Mukwonago has plenty of urban legends and plenty of ghost stories. And we would do that. And we go down to the gates of hell. Everybody has to park in the park and ride that was right there. And then everybody's trudging through like in a September or October night, like a Friday night. We trudge in and we get into the farmhouse. And, this is 1994, it's probably September of 1994. And we're in the house, and it's, you can see the stars and everything in there, and because it's burned out, and you go through different rooms, and we set up a Ouija board, and it's me and a girl I'd eventually date. Welcome to my life of bad decisions. But, so we're sitting there, and we start, just playing around, and there's maybe a group of 10 people around us while everybody else is going through the different rooms of the house. And my friend comes up and goes, "Here, use this as an antenna," and throws it on the Ouija board. And it's a bone. And I'm like, "Where'd you get that?" And he goes, "They're in the walls." So I'm like, what? So we look through in the burned out walls and like the holes in the walls and stuff. There are animal bones in all of the walls here at this particular farmhouse. And not just like a few of them, like dozens of bones in the walls. I did not think that was particularly paranormal. In fact, I just thought it was a bunch of dumb farm kids that listen to Ozzy too much. Really, like I was just like, okay, this isn't paranormal. Like this is silly. And I didn't even think of it. And 3 months later, we're going to another a hotel. It was supposed to be a resort hotel in Mukwonago called Rainbow Springs Hotel. It never opened up. And so there was this, until it burned down in the mid 2000s, there was just this gigantic resort hotel that had never opened. And it just sat like there was a golf course eventually opened, but nothing else did. And we snuck in one night, and because there were haunting rumors, and there was rumors that the owner killed himself. The owner, like the guy that he didn't kill himself there, that was just a rumor. He died, but he was dragged by the police out of the property. And we were going through, and I'm with a guy that works at the golf course, and he's like, "I'll sneak you in." And we're going through hoping to see a ghost, right? And instead, we wander into a room where there's a pentagram and chalk on the floor, like just the cheesiest. Imagine the cheesiest devil sacrifice you can, and a dead chicken in the middle, like somebody brought a chicken to this place, cut it up in the middle of this pentagram. And once again, I was like, oh man, like who's doing, like, it's not, I wanted to see a ghost. I don't believe in this satanic panic stuff. I'm like, this is silly. But then we hear somebody in a different room, and this is the middle of winter, and it's freezing in place. And so there's somebody else in the building with us. So we're hiding in the sacrifice room until the sound passes. And then eventually, we wander out, and we're just like, oh, we didn't see any ghosts in the old Rainbow Springs Hotel, but we did see somebody kill a chicken, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking it's the dumbest thing in the world. I think the bones in the wall are the dumbest thing in the world. And then you hear about the Walworth County animal control officer and the Beast of Bray Road. And at the time, he's talking about, and so they talk about this in the movie you were in, Jay, in the Bray Road Beast. He talks about the crazy amount of bones that he was finding in the late 80s, just a few miles away from where I grew up. In the early 90s, we were finding the same thing. And so then I was like, okay, I never believed in any of this devil worship stuff, and I always thought it was silly. But is there something to what the people were doing? People were sacrificing something. I walked into one, and then I was at the location of another, and then all of a sudden, there's sightings of a werewolf in this area. Not sightings where people called the police, where they're like, holy shit, there's a werewolf. Help us. Like they called the cops because they were so scared. Is there some kind of connection between the activity that these people were doing, which I thought was silly, but something did happen in that area not too long after, these things were going on. And so to me, that is really intriguing, because stuff that I thought was just dumb kids being stupid or trying to rebel or anything like that, now connects to a paranormal phenomena, where people saw something that scared them enough where they had to alert the authorities. And I think that's something worth looking into. And so we talk about the Beast of Bray Road, but we're also talking about interdimensional. I'd always thought, well, if there is an upright canine, or what is Linda Godfrey always calls them? Two-legged. She's got a word for the two-legged upright canines or whatever.
Yeah, that's what she says. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, if you had to sacrifice a chicken to get it come through, it ain't an upright canine. So I guess what Jay was talking about kind of inspired me to talk about that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
But yeah, I mean, it could be tie in there too. I mean, there are different theories out there about the Beast of Bray Road and Bigfoot and all that. So because they're theories and there are many of them, we're not exactly sure which one's which or which one they could actually be.
Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to go digging for werewolf skeletons in southeastern Wisconsin. Just get me. I'll bring my shovel.
Let's do it.
That's a long drive, but I might have to get into that.
All right, sounds good. Just might I recommend May through September. After that, stay where you are.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, stay away from the winter up here. It gets cold.
Are you kidding? I'm out there when it's like 0 or 5 below. I figure, you know what? Nobody else is out there, right? And you've got that human contamination, the false positives of being out in the woods. But when it's that cold, just like Mike was saying, everybody stay home. That's great. I want everybody to do that,
Yeah, unless Bigfoot's staying home too. Even the Sasquatch is like, below 0, I'm in a cave.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. All right, Miranda.
Well,
now just hang on just a second. I have to absolutely say, Miranda here, she is one gutsy woman, because there's a story that she told us during her first interview with us. It blew Joe away. Actually. That's when you stayed the night by yourself in the hole at that haunted jail.
Yeah.
That she has a Harley that she drives around on when she goes to go and do her investigation.
Places on a Harley.
Yeah. Just in case, anyone doesn't know who I am, I actually travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations. The stories I really like to tell are ones that have a very rich history, and I highlight them on my web series, Ghost Biker Explorations. And, one of the things that I do like to do at several of these locations are actually sleep. I will do a full-scale night investigation if I have the time to do it. And then I will set up cameras to make sure, all entrances and exits are covered, and cover myself, as well as multiple recorders, just to see if, we get different types of interaction while I'm trying to sleep. And the time that Mark and Joe mentioned was when I investigated Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. I've investigated that one on 6 different occasions, and this one particular occasion actually investigated by myself overnight, and slept for 3.5 hours in the hole, which is their solitary confinement area. And I got what I would have considered, as far as my evidence goes, about 3 minutes and 15 seconds of Class A EVPs, everything from intelligent responses, actually acknowledging the fact that I was in that room and sleeping, to a lot of residual hauntings of, a ball being bounced against the wall for about maybe 2 minutes, or excuse me, 5 minutes. And then talking going on between the cells, and then sounds of laundry being done upstairs. And, while Brushy State Penitentiary is a tourist attraction at this time, out of all the times I investigated, I only investigated on one occasion.
Oh, we're dropping around.
Uh-oh.
And
There we go.
It was there. But during those times, only one of the times it was actually open as a tourist attraction. I would have to say probably, I'd have to echo Dr. Sumner's sentiments on the old Gilchrist County Jail as being an amazing investigation. I have had the opportunity to investigate multiple times with Dr. Sumner. And in fact, one of the first times we met was actually on an investigation. And so if we get the opportunity, we have similar styles. So if we get the opportunity, we will investigate together. But I like to actually cover a lot of the locations that aren't so much commercial and are a little bit lesser known, kind of more of the local legends. And probably one of my most favorite that I've done that I've highlighted, because I've traveled all over the country and investigated a lot of the paranormal hotspots and well-known locations. But one of my favorite is probably, it took place in Charleston, Tennessee, and it was the story of the Phantom Monk, the monk who had passed away in a train wreck that occurred it was mid to late 1860s. And the legend goes that the doctor actually recovered the body from the train wreck. He thought, this is a monk, so he's not going to be missed. He doesn't have any family or anything. So he took the body back to his home and dissolved the flesh from the bones. And so he took a sabbatical, because during this time, he had taken care of a lot of people who were injured and who had passed away during the accident. And when he resurfaced, there was actually a brand new skeleton hanging in his office. And so as the story goes, other doctors, after this doctor had left, other doctors were experiencing things inside of his practice. And whenever they tore it down, the legend goes that they found a monk's garb and rosary in that area. During this investigation, I was able to investigate the train wreck site up in Charleston, and I actually was able to reach out to the family who owned the alleged tub and was able to go into their home, investigate that haunted relic. And through that, we found that the home that this relic was stored in, it had been abandoned for 12 years, was just being used as a storage facility. This home, which I call the Sunset Hill House, ended up becoming a year-long case study and one of the most active investigations that I have ever had, and one of the most active cases. And so we were able to follow this through doing lives. As a lot of you know, once the camera goes on, things will kind of quieten down and you won't really have a lot of activity. But this place is a lot different. It craved the attention and craved the activity. And so we were able to see this one from being part of this other local legend to being the case to actually seeing it through to conclusion. So I would have to say, out of all of them, that's probably one of the most interesting, just because it led to such a big case for us.
That one sounds very intriguing. So, but yeah, I mean, I can see where the doctor would be thinking that the monk wouldn't be missed because of the fact that monks are seclusive. They seclude themselves from everything, and then the only thing that they really
Did everybody?
not that I know of. Sorry.
Well, what was great about that is that some of the activity that I was getting at the actual train wreck site, I was able to corroborate that with some of the activity that I was actually getting inside of the home when I was investigating the tub. On both occasions, I got the name Chrism, and I got that over the spirit box. And I got the name 3 times, twice over the spirit box, once at the train wreck site, once at the house, and then once as a straight disembodied voice inside the home. And after I went back and was doing a lot of research, supposedly the monk, they believe that he boarded in the Maryland area because the train during the specific train that came down was coming from I believe Massachusetts through New Orleans, I believe, was where that train was going. And so Chrism was a popular name during the 1860s in the Massachusetts area, as well as, I believe, I want to say kind of around the Wisconsin area. I mean, there was a big space between where this name was, and it was a big family last name during that time frame. So we were able to kind of, even though we couldn't find any of the train wreck records or anything of who was on it, we were able to get evidence at least from those 2 sites that it could have been potential activity from that.
It's pretty cool. And you did now when you do your investigations, you do post them, right? Or
I do actually. Yes. So, and one thing I'll say, when I'm traveling around, it's usually either, unless I'm doing a collaboration, it's either just myself and filmed vlog style, or I will have myself and a videographer. When I'm sleeping in these locations, I'm always sleeping alone. And so we do document this through the episodes. We're rolling into season 4 right now. So people can go back and watch all of those past seasons. And then we'll also do lives and put that. So I try to document everything, because it seems like the minute I don't have my camera out, that's when something happens. So awesome. Yeah, always got a camera and a recorder rolling.
Very, very awesome. I love your style. Your style is just totally great.
Thank you.
So Mr. Klein.
I'm a comedy writer, so I'm kind of the odd man out here.
That's okay. You can always chime in if you like.
Yeah.
But you're the one that we did our first home investigation with.
Mm-hmm. And it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
If you notice, I'm not at my house right now.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. You can take a match to my house right now for all I care. It has gotten really bad. I don't go there.
Ouch.
We pay for the house. We go there and mow the lawn, and that's about what we do right now.
It sounds like that we're going to have to come back up there.
Take it with you. I mean, this thing has pinned Molly to the ground lately.
No, seriously, you did not tell me this.
Okay.
Until now.
So, as a victim, I'll just give you guys my story. All the stuff on the show you can hear, but one day, like, Molly's a little girl. She's my girlfriend 11 years. Just jokingly, she'll be like, oh, I want to go to bed. And I'll just grab her. I'll run her upstairs and I'll body slam her on the bed, right? Now you're in bed. Well, it pinned her to the ground in the basement, and I could not move her. It was like I was pulling on a chain to the ground. There's no way she could hold me back. And I could not get her off the ground. She was like cemented into the floor. And the last straw was we were in bed, and in our bedroom we have the balcony.
Yep.
Everything got super cold. So I got out of bed. I'm like, oh, the door opened or something. It's wintertime. And I could see my breath, but the door wasn't open. And when I looked in our bedroom mirror, I saw the lady stick her head over my head and then put it back down and use me to hide herself. And I was like, we're out. We're done. We're just done.
All right. So you got more than just Timmy there or Thomas there.
No, we got the lady in white there. She is.
So yeah. It sounds like we need to come back up there. I did not know all this. I don't know.
It's pinned me to the ground twice, and Molly kind of thought I was messing around. It always chooses me, but Now it's kind of showing herself to, like, it was making me think I'm crazy. You know, I come home from work, every cabinet, every drawer, everything is open in the house.
Mhm.
And then I'm just like, oh, it's going to be a rough night.
Yeah, I remember when this all first started, you sent us a video actually of you when you came home with all your cabinets just open a crack and your drawers open just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the oven door opened enough that the light was on inside.
Yeah. It opens everything, medicine cabinets, dresser drawers, everything. It just opens them.
So did it start as a did it like start with subtle things and then eventually get greater and greater, or did it start big and go from there?
I guess it kind of started with subtle. So Mark gave me these crystals, like protection crystals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the boy, because there was the family beforehand told us about some boy that a psychic saw, says he likes to steal stuff. So what I did was I went and I bought like a whole bunch more crystals, and they started disappearing. And I have like a tackle box with them labeled in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones in there all cracked and shattered. They're all cracked. Every single one of them.
All right. Interesting.
So, I mean, I tried to I don't know what to do, how to get rid of it or protect us, but it's like I don't even care about that house. Just take it, put a match to it. We're done. 30-year mortgage. Stuck.
Now you're making me feel bad, Tom.
No,
I didn't even know about this. You haven't talked to us about it yet.
Well, it's it's not a good place to write comedy, so I come over here and we just stay here,
No, I got you.
Yeah, so we're just like,
because it did start out the way you explained it originally to us. It did start out kind of just like a little kid being mischievous.
Yeah, messing with me,
and then you right,
and
I determined it was because you are sensitive to the different energies and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that you seen the lady in the white lady once.
Yep.
And now it's more that you've seen her?
I've seen her twice now, but it was really creepy how she used my own body to hide the reflection in the mirror. That was just, she used me to hide. It was weird. In the mirror.
All right. Well, now this sounds like we've got something that maybe the bunch of us can kind of draw on and have suggestions.
Yeah,
possible.
Yeah, any suggestions? You know what's really weird? My computer, I did 2 shows at the studio today using StreamYard. Would not let my computer sign on. As soon as it became my turn, everybody started spinning. Like it was stopping me from...
It did that on my turn, too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
As I was talking, that's why I paused, because everybody kind of went black and started spinning, but me and you, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the internet bubble.
Well, I don't know why my computer won't work right now, but I was trying to get on earlier. Molly couldn't fix it, so it's something bad.
Oh, okay.
She can fix it.
I know Beth dropped out. I hope she didn't break her phone again.
Well, what I'm wondering about this, particular thing in this house is that are the phenomena just in when you are at home, or are you finding it anywhere differently where you are seeing are you seeing things like this more when you're not at the house? Or
just had a bad, when I came over to my parents' house, we all had horrible, vivid nightmares that night, the first night. And then that's about it. But I'm not seeing, I'm on edge, so maybe I'm just hearing stuff, but I'm jumpy. So I don't think I'm seeing anything outside of the house, really.
Did you buy this house, or are you okay? All right.
Yeah, they bought this house.
Yeah, they bought it back in October of 2019.
Yeah.
And then it was I think it was March of last year when we went.
Yeah, it was a year ago.
And did the investigation for them. And we did catch a lot of interesting stuff.
Made me feel better because at that time it wasn't messing with Molly at all. It was only like making me go nuts.
Yeah, it was only like targeting Tom and screwing with him. And after everything on that, I came to the conclusion that it was possibly just the young boy spirit, that Thomas, that was goofing with you. I actually did not feel any other type of energies in that house other than, a little mischievous, and that was about it.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting that this would ramp up like this.
Yeah.
Well, it's obviously affecting your life if you're not wanting to stay there.
Oh yeah.
Like a house that you're paying the mortgage.
Yeah. Mowing the lawn.
Like that's when you know there's something serious, when it's like, oh my God, there's an auto pay on a place that we're not even living.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tom. I don't mean to be funny,
No,
but you're a comedy guy,
I
so
understand.
lighten the fuck up. No, but really though, like it is a hard thing, and so like, what have we all done in situations like that where we feel like something is working against us or an energy is preventing us from doing something? Like, have any of you guys done something where you feel there's been some bad juju against you or something that has turned that around or turned the energy around? Because he's not going to be able to stage the house if he can't spend the night.
Right. Yeah. No, in my experiences, the only thing I've done was basically channeled the energy. I've been able to do that, and I used crystals and sage to cleanse the areas.
And, I used to think all that stuff was bullshit too, Ryan, like crystals and sage, like, okay, man, let's smoke a doobie and we'll talk about it. But eventually really the thing that turned me around was Dean Radin's book, Real Magic. And when Dean talks about the importance of ritual in the magic spell, he's like, people that don't believe in magic, they will do something and then it will happen. And it's not belief. It's not faith that does it. It's the ritual that does it. It's the going through the motions that does it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, maybe all the sage people were right. All right, maybe all the hippies had something going for them when I was just like, oh Christ. And so that kind of thing, Tom, some kind, people talk about this with poltergeist experiences too, where they say that when they cast it out, it works and they don't know why it works, or even why an exorcism might work. But it's the going through the motions of a kind of a ritual to cleanse the place. And that's the only reason I'm saying. The only time I ever did something like that, I tell you what, it was 2 years ago at the convention in Alton, Illinois. I had like 3 or 4 bad things happen in a row. And I was like, something's up. And the week before, we'd worked on a song based on Jack Parsons and Babylon and a whole thing. And I was like, oh man, did I get some bad juju from Jack Parsons, who blew himself up in a magic ritual in Pasadena? Like, did I bring that on me? And so I'm like, how do I get rid of that if I did have that? And then I did a ritual that involved Ronnie James Dio, because Ronnie James Dio and the fingers that he would use for heavy metal was based on his grandmother telling him that the Malocchio, this was used to ward off the evil eye, that people would use this. So Ozzy went like this on stage. And so Ronnie James Dio thought that he needed a hand signal in Black Sabbath. And so he used his Italian grandmother's thing, the rock fist. And he's like, it's based on the Malocchio, which is to ward off the evil eye. And so I listened to a bunch of Dio and I had my own little ritual and it all went away. Now that's probably in my head, right? But still it worked. And so it wasn't the fact of listening to Dio. It was the ritual that seemed to have an effect.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, whatever you guys have done, I'm asking the table what they've done for similar situations. That's the one time where I felt like I was in a weird situation, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something and create something that means something to me, and then go through with it and see if it does anything. And anyway, that's my embarrassing story for the day. Doing a ritual, listening to Holy Diver, and I got to go.
Well, what I would say about what I've been kind of hearing in the last few minutes is that, number one, I consider myself more of a ghost researcher than a ghost buster. So when I go to locations, I'm not necessarily there to, eliminate the situation, the problem, but just try to find evidence, try to debunk, try to find a natural explanation, if you will, for what might be going on. And then if we do find that there is something, through our experimentation, EVPs, our personal experiences, then we would bring in somebody. It would be a medium, a psychic, a clairvoyant, to make direct communication with those entities or individuals. And you could all jump on me and say I'm wrong, but basically, I've always said that it's been my experience, my feeling. If you should be either one of two things, either a ghost researcher or a ghost buster, because to do both, sometimes I don't know, it doesn't fit my profile of what I normally would do in an investigation. And getting back to the idea of using rituals and so forth. I've had people use rituals. I've actually investigated places where before I got there, the woman or the family may have had 3 or 4 different people come in and say, well, no, try this, no, try that, put salt in the corners, do sage the whole area, throw holy water around and everything. And either sometimes it makes it worse or sometimes it doesn't help at all. And if you kind of think of it if you're a spirit and you're there for whatever reason, and somebody comes in and starts trying to get rid of you by just burning some sage, think of it just logically. What do you think that's going to do to a spirit? Sage is basically a Native American Indian custom. So my way of thinking, unless you're a Native American Indian, it's not going to mean too much to you. Now, it may in some cases, and I've seen it work in some cases where it kind of clears energy in homes, where it's kind of like, made it more of a neutral environment, slightly positive environment, and not be so negative. And the same thing in say, calling in a priest or something and sprinkling holy water around. Now, what if the ghost is an atheist or a Muslim or something that doesn't even believe in that? So you're throwing around holy water, trying to get rid of the spirit. They don't have any idea what you're doing. And that's why it's so important, I think, when to really do research on the area, what happened in the past, talk to people, and find out, if you can, a profile for the ghost. Be kind of like a psychic detective, if you will, and go in there and try to figure out, perhaps, is this simply a Native American Indian spirit? Is this something from, an Indian massacre happened, trying to get a profile, because that way, if you do that, I think you have a better chance of kind of alleviating the situation. And like I say, we just don't normally do that in our work. We leave it to people that have more experience than that. I've been involved in cases where I think it's been very negative, and I just simply refuse to get involved with negativity because for various reasons. Number one, your team that you bring in can basically become under physical attack or possession or oppression or anything like that, or even become an attachment of some kind. So if I come across a case that's very, very negative or somewhat negative, or even, I hate to use the big D, demonic, I would usually kind of try to hand it off to somebody who is seasoned more in demonology or the clergy and let them deal with it rather than us go in. And again, I'm not trying to hammer anybody here for their beliefs or anything. It's not my intention. It's just that the way I go about things is maybe a little bit different than maybe some other people do, not necessarily in this group, but just generally speaking. We just try to, do like one thing at a time. It's kind of like you go in there, trying to find out if there's really something going on there, or if it's misinterpretation of the facts, if it's somebody that's using drugs or alcohol, if it's somebody that's got a mental instability that may be hallucinating. Is there something in the environment causing them to hallucinate? All these things got to be kind of eliminated before you even get involved with the paranormal aspect. And that's what we try to do when we're doing investigations, to try to eliminate all that, and whatever's left could be paranormal. Sorry for the long speech.
No, that's fine, Dale, and yeah, I understand that, but I don't believe any of us are actually thinking that you're trying to put us down for any of the beliefs that we have. Everybody on this panel, like I said before, has different ways of doing things, and we have also different experiences in the field as we have done them. That's why, in Tom's case here, I think it would be good to have input from the panel, and if they have any input to give.
I agree on that, and that, like Dale said, that's kind of my soapbox. That'd be a whole nother show. Because you got people that run in and they do the sage rodeo, and you have to really know what you're going into. You have to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be selective about the cases that you choose, but you also have to be educated. You can go in there and get somebody hurt. There's so many different things. What if someone has, like you said, they have an illness, and you're sitting there? I'm not going to say any names, but I know for a fact of a case where someone was told that they were possessed by a demon. They were not. They had a drug addiction and mental illness, and they ended up killing themselves. You don't mess with stuff you don't understand. You just don't do it. You can get people hurt. And, that's why I think it takes very special people to do residential investigations. And for the love of God, there's people out here charging people $1,000 to come in, and they have no clue what they're doing. If you are not clergy, you have no business doing certain things. If you have not done this for long periods of time, educated, leave it alone.
Yeah. No, I do agree.
How can I get $1,000 to do a paranormal investigation? I've got to put up some kind of Craigslist or whatever. If people are paying that much money, then no job too big, no fee too big. Isn't that what Bill Murray said?
But see, I don't believe in charging anybody anything. I mean, if we're going to be doing this, it's basically getting us more experience in the field when we go out and do this, because we run across everything. When we go in and do any kind of a home investigation, and we're paying attention to the surroundings, and we're debunking as everything that we possibly can. And like Dale said, when we come down to the very end of it all, whatever's left is what's going to be left. And we got to take that and figure out what is causing it. So, but the thing is, to charge a person for that, I feel that's wrong, because we're still learning from it whenever we're out there doing it.
Yeah, what I think actually, unfortunately, was going on sometimes is, and I can perfectly understand it. I've come across cases, like I say, where people have went through literally 6-7 different groups, or psychics, or mediums, or shamans, or whatever you want to call it, to try to get rid of stuff. And in some cases, they have been built for a lot of money. And I think it's because of the people that are having their experiences are very desperate on some cases. What I've seen in my work, and if anybody wants to pipe in, please do so. But I see two different types of people when I get involved with personal, private cases. I get the people that are just curious about it, that they want to find out if it's an aunt or an uncle or a friend or a loved one. And when if we can determine that, we just say, well, just leave it alone. Leave Uncle Henry there. He's fine. We don't want anything. We want him to leave because he's family. Then we get the other side, flip side of the coin, people that are absolutely terrified of what's going on. They are just beyond themselves. They can't control it. They want the stuff to stop yesterday. And those people, unfortunately, are the ones that get involved with, I'm just going to say it right out loud, sleazy paranormal investigative groups that charge extravagant amounts of money. And I've seen, some of the posts on Facebook. It's just ridiculous. Just $1,000 for this, $200 just for an interview, so much for this, so much for travel. I've never charged a single penny, for anything that I've ever done. Now there have been cases. Sometimes I've went to some people's home, done an investigation, and they said, "Well, we're going to order a pizza. Let's at least feed your team or something." I'm happy, or something. In some cases, they even try to give us money, which I say, don't have to give us anything. There are groups, unfortunately, out there that kind of prey upon people, and that's why, very often when serious investigative teams like people on our panel today, eventually get involved, with that client, they often have to clean up the mess that other people have started. By doing crazy stuff that may have even stirred up the activity even more.
Well, what I found, particularly, the preying on people seems to be, especially in this field, a very easy thing to do. So for our, ghost, there's nothing on our American Ghost Walks page that talks about investigation whatsoever. Like there might be we'll do a ghost hunt and show you how they use the same kind of tools they use in the TV shows or whatever sometime. But there's never anything like, we'll come to your house, right? But the amount of calls you get from people who are interested in you coming to their house are fairly common. And it's usually people who are very sad. And you'll get a call from somebody who's like, my mom just died and I'm interested in the paranormal. I'm interested in knowing if there's life after death. All those kind of things. And, as a tourism company that deals in history and ghost stories and legends and stuff, for the most part, the last thing you want to do is take somebody for money to tell them, yes, we know there's definitely life after death and your mom's in a good place. Like you could get $100 easy doing that. And it just, I would think why would anybody ever do that? And then you're like, well, how many spam calls do you get every day? So are there people out there who will take advantage of people who are sad, who are lonely, who are scared, who are grieving? And you hope there aren't, but there are. And so it really breaks your heart when you realize that other people don't give a shit about other humans like that.
Yeah.
Well, and something too that a lot of people don't talk about. I mean, we can talk about the paranormal investigators that take advantage of the homeowners, but there's also the reverse side of that as well. As being an investigator, for myself, I'm like you all. That's something that I never charge, but I've had to have a very strong vetting process for anyone that I take on as a residential case. And I see it more often than not. I mean, people just, again, you have the ones that are sad that want the people to come in and do a true investigation, but you also have the people who have ulterior motives for bringing in paranormal investigators. So I think that's something that's not very often talked about. And from that side, I've had to turn some cases away because I found out for fakers. I've found out for people who have weird motives they think I'm going to come to their house alone and investigate, or people that's seeking fame because they think they're going to be highlighted on your show. And, for me, if I do take on a residential case, I don't ever want to highlight it on my show for that purpose, because it's for the purpose of helping someone. And I'm totally with Dale. I don't cleanse houses. I don't clear homes. That's, I'm the person that comes in to try to help find a logical explanation, to help, determine if we can explain what's going on. But if you do take on a residential case, you essentially become some of these people's lifeline. And these cases can go on for long, extended times. And it can be a very draining process. I just think that that's something that's not talked about enough from the perspective of paranormal investigators. And I've met a lot of people and talked to a lot of former investigators who have said they will not do residential cases for a multitude of reasons, whether it be, because they've walked into a really bad drug situation, they've walked into a really bad mental type situation. So for me, it's made me create a liability. I've got waivers for if I go into someone's home, and then also a background check. It's important to check these backgrounds. I mean, I think there's a lot that has to be looked in before you just go to somebody's house and start doing residential cases. And then if there is a type of situation where you need to either bring in a priest or a shaman or somebody that will help take care of an issue, if there is an issue, I think you need to, one, be able to say, okay, here's where my job stops, and we move on to someone else, and be able to have those people that you can contact for just that purpose.
See, that's one of the reasons we do a lot of, we have a very extensive interview process. And basically, what I like to do with any type of residential case that I do, a private home, my team is brought in literally ice cold. They're not told anything about what's going on, except that they're going to allegedly a house that's haunted. That's all they know. I'm the one that does the interviews over the phone, or in some cases in a Zoom chat or something like that, where I can get a kind of a feel of what's going on. So I kind of let the person tell in their own words what's going on, ask questions here and there where I need to fill in the blanks, dot the I's, cross the T's, but not try to ask any leading questions that might allow them to, perhaps sensationalize their story a bit more than what it actually is. And that I've been doing this long enough that I can literally tell, I believe at least, where there's some deception going on, where there are some cases that I may not want to take because they're too negative. I look at the area I'm going to, like I don't know your name, the previous one that just talked from about going in, and that's a safety concern. When you go into locations. I mean, even in this day and age, unfortunately, there are a lot of crazy people in this world, and you got to be very careful going into homes. And that's why I never go anywhere by myself. I always bring a team along, and there's safety in numbers. And I think if people, have put together a good, kind of like a very good questionnaire interview that they can go over and talk to the people. And then just be very blunt with the people. Just, ask very specific questions. Are you taking any drugs? I mean, are you doing, recreational drugs? Do you have a problem? Do you have a mental problem? I mean, people may be offended by that, but you still have to at least, ask those types of questions sometimes before you get involved, because it may be a total waste of time going out there and then finding out that you've been talking to is a person that has some mental problems, or is an alcohol abuser or something like that. So there are a lot of things out there that you have to do even before you set foot in somebody's house to kind of get a better idea of what you're getting involved with.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dale, because when I was telling the story before, we were in the Gates of Hell house or whatever, and my friend threw the bone on the Ouija board and said, "Here, use this as an antenna." He eventually joined up with a paranormal group in Milwaukee, led by Richard Hendricks, who was a police officer. He wrote Weird Wisconsin with Linda Godfrey in the late 90s. And, he had a paranormal group like before Ghost Hunters on TV, this was going out and investigating before people knew about EMF meters or the kind of things they do now. And so my friend had a degree in social work, and his mother was a social worker too. And so he, after a couple of years in this group, he's like, I don't know that I believe in ghosts anymore, but I do believe in child abuse and alcoholism and drug problems. And we're seeing that a lot of most of the calls that they would get would be people who would have these kind of issues in their home. And it, disheartened me. I was like, oh, I was hoping that there'll be a real ghost story. He's like, we haven't had any that were. And I mean, Richard Hendricks kind of left the whole scene. And so did my friend. But, that makes me think about the Demon House case from Gary, Indiana, that was so popular, in the past 5-6 years, that we have never talked to the family. You talk to the priest, you talk to the people around. You have, obviously the testimony of the social workers. When she saw the kid, running on the walls and stuff like that, something she said wasn't physically possible. Like those kind of things are very remarkable in the testimony involved. But you never have any testimony from the family, and it makes you feel like, is it because there sure might have been something paranormal going on, but was it caused by something horrible that was happening within the family? Because there's some reason that we have never heard from the family in that case. It just made me think about that when we're talking about how to vet people properly for an investigation. It is a hard thing, and we're not licensed therapists. You're a paranormal investigator. You're somebody there, like you're licensed to listen to an EVP and make some shit up. You're not licensed to talk to somebody about some kind of actual like mental pathology that might be happening. And it's dangerous. And that is a hard line. You want to try not to cross so you don't do any more damage. Like we said that, Beth, were you saying like you talk to somebody like, oh, they're possessed by a demon. Like, hey, asshole, what did you just say? You can't just tell somebody they're possessed by a demon.
No.
How do they go to sleep at night after they hear that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
The whole idea that basically what you're saying, I agree with. But you also got to remember too that I have never, knock on wood, I have never yet come across a case which I would say is demonic. And I think that's a testament basically to how I interview people, the information I gather from people before I even go to someone's house. I ask the right questions. I ask them if they've been involved with seances, Ouija boards, automatic writing. They've been involved with black magic rituals, satanic worship, voodoo. Any type of not saying that voodoo is not it's maybe a little bit different, but any type of communication with something from the other side. So you're basically getting a profile of before you even get there of kind of what to expect. And I think the more questions you ask, the better off you're going to be as far as being on the right track.
Yeah, and that's something that I think all of us can actually agree on. The more information we can get, and before we go on to an investigation, the better off we're going to be, because we're going to know what we need to actually look for.
So I think just to kind of circle back around, to Tom's situation, I think most of us can all agree that, it is one of those that we kind of don't approach personally, but we would recommend he seek something like a demonologist or a priest to actually look into this case. And I do agree with Dale that we do need information from our residential clients, but I also agree with Mike on the aspect that we have to be careful on the information that we gather from those clients, because you need to look at the real world possibility that that information could get out and you could be held liable or for slander. So you do need to be careful on that aspect as well. To Dale's point earlier, we Soul Sisters, we really don't engage in residential investigations such as that. We'll go in and do an investigations, but not so much for the fact of actually exorcising a demon, if you will. That is not in our wheelhouse. So we do pass those off to a demonologist. But again, we are very careful about the information that we would collect, and just because we don't want that getting out and to be held liable for that. So I think you've got to weigh both, the real world applications of what we're doing as well. But, to Tom's point and to his story, for me personally, I would recommend that you do seek out some type of a demonologist or a priest to talk about your situation.
All right. Well, lucky for me, I knew Mark and Joe for a couple years before they did any sort of investigation in my house. So,
well, Tom, have you not to say that it's not a paranormal kind of thing, have you checked into any kind of natural gas or carbon monoxide or the different things that can happen? Just the different things that can happen and make you see shit.
What do they call that? The inspector was just through there. Because we just bought the house.
Sure.
So he did every test imaginable. So,
the only other thing I would think is another thing to check on, and this might have this might be paranormal or non, is to look at some kind of geologic or magnetic anomalies that might be related to the position of the place. And, it might be. There is some evidence. I mean, I use evidence in quotes or whatever, but there is some evidence that certain places that have certain geologic or electromagnetic anomalies might contribute to paranormal experiences.
We're about two blocks from a dam on the Milwaukee River. That's anything that I can think of.
I'm just thinking little things to look into, because I want you, like, you bought a house. I want you to enjoy it and not to feel afraid, and that things might not be, even though it might be tough. There might be ways to enjoy that place that it might be like, what? Oh my God. As soon as we put up, we have to wear tinfoil hats, but it's great. I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean, though? There might be little other things and explanations or stuff that might help make the difficult stuff go away.
Molly's talking. Just from a graveyard too.
Yeah.
There's a very real phenomena associated with very strong electromagnetic fields inside homes. In fact, the equipment that a lot of investigators use, whether it be K2 meters or Dr. Gauss meters or even some of the high-end stuff, they're unless they were built specifically for the use in ghost research, they were made for different purposes. They were made to pick up strong electromagnetic fields inside homes. And in many cases, we know that there is a real malady, I guess you could call it, which is called EMF hypersensitivity, which actually allows people to be affected by electromagnetic fields in their homes. And this can actually create hallucinations, skin irritations, rashes. It can include tactile sensations on your body. So if that hasn't already been checked out, I would suggest that you have somebody come in and do a check of the electromagnetic fields, just using meters and so forth. They're readily available. I don't know if you've already done that. I know for a fact that I've investigated locations. In fact, there was a theater up in Allegan, Michigan, called the Region Theater that I investigated a number of years ago during a public investigation. And there was one room we had walked into. We actually had a millimeter, and we walked into this millimeter. Before we walked into the threshold, it was 0.0. When we got inside, we had 123 milligauss reading when we went inside that room. I actually have a picture of it. It's on the website. I couldn't believe and it stayed. It wasn't a spike. It stayed at 123 milligauss. And I immediately started to get a pounding headache when I walked into that room. We came back out. The meter immediately went across the threshold, went back to 0.0. So we know that, EMF fields can affect people. So if you haven't already tried that, that could be a suggestion as well.
Okay.
Yeah, EMF fields do affect people. But during our investigation there, we did have an EMF meter with us, and we were using it. And I believe the only real hit we got was in the basement, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah.
But
we still had a lot of weird stuff going on in that.
Yeah, there was quite a few weird and unexplainable things that did happen, but anyway.
So, the other thing that doesn't get mentioned too much in the paranormal world that most of these wonderful people, there's a few of them on here that I know, do this. They preserve the history, of these places, and not only the place itself, but the history that's behind it. And that doesn't get mentioned too often in this field, when these people do that, that preserve the building history to keep everything intact the way it's left, so that it can still tell a story, so to learn from it still.
Yeah, I believe that histories and hauntings go hand in hand, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to know the history of the location to understand what might be going on paranormally. Sometimes, historically, there may have been something that happened there in the past, even before the house was there. There could have been an Indian massacre. There could have been some sort of skirmish. There could have been a murder. There could have been something that left some sort of residual trace memory or place memory on that location. And no matter what's built on that spot, some people say, well, you tear a house down, well, that's the end of the haunting because the house is gone. No, you actually have what's called stigmatized property. Property actually can have a stigma associated with it because of the events of the past. So you have to know the history, absolutely, and that's what we dig into. No pun intended, but we actually kind of dig into the paranormal end of that, using history, going into historical societies, libraries, the internet, and even talking to police, and in some cases older people in the neighborhood that have been there, maybe lived their whole lives there, and their families have lived their whole lives there, to see, kind of get a feel, who lived in that house before, what was on that property before the house. And in many cases they say, oh, there might have been a little tiny cemetery there at one time, and then eventually the stones just went missing, and nobody knew about it, and they built a house right over it. So it's these kind of things that you really got to know before you get involved with it as well. So these are things that kind of a precursor to getting involved with a particular private home or private case.
And I can't think of any two people that do it better than Chris and Miranda. First off, Chris already knows I can listen to her talk every day of my life. Like, I would want her to speak for me at everything.
Oh, thanks, Beth.
But both of them, they go back to how important not only is the storytelling to keep the history alive, but everything. They put so much work into doing research and telling it the right way. And that's one, I mean, I respect them for many other reasons, but that is one of the most important things. Do everything right. They going in, okay, this, that, and the third. They dig a little deeper than the next person's going to dig. And, isn't that what it's all about? I mean, how can you have an investigation if you don't even know what, I want to talk to John. Well, there's no John there, but there might be a Paul. if you did the research, you're going to know.
Right.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
But you're absolutely right. And, to Dale's point and to all of our points here, it's just the history is very important in what we do. And, Dale, we actually had a case where it was the reverse of what you were talking about earlier, where they actually, this was the Ma Barker house in Ocklawaha, Florida. And this was the site of the 1935 shootout between Ma Barker and Fred Barker and the FBI. And they actually moved the house from the original shootout location in 2016. They moved it from one side of a lake to another, and the hauntings at the property ceased, but the hauntings in the house continued. So we've been the only team to investigate that location, and we found that the spirits didn't stay with the land; they stayed with the house. So you've also got to look into that as well, and that, again, to Beth's point, goes back to the historical research that you conduct at these locations. And I think most people, especially on this panel, really hold true to the fact that the history and the research behind not only the hauntings, but the historical events that were on that property or around that property are extremely important to what we do.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna do a little mention too. Were you not behind part of that moving of that house?
No, I wasn't behind moving the house. When Marion County actually purchased the house in 2016, we worked with them to help with the historical aspect of it, but I was not involved with moving it. But we were the first team that they allowed to investigate that house.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that because I remember you talking about that when we did our show with you.
Yeah, no. So I wasn't involved with it personally, but since we've investigated there, it is one of those locations that is pretty near and dear to my heart, just because of the historical aspect behind it. But to be the first team to investigate it, to find the things that we found, to really validate what people have experienced, both that have rented the house, lived in the house, or just passed by the house. To me, that was extremely fulfilling.
That's cool. That's cool. So thank you for talking about Tom's situation and your inputs on that. But we do have a one of our viewers that was asking something about poltergeists and Joe, would you bring that back up? I don't know if he's seeing it or not. But they were asking what our overall opinion on what a poltergeist is, because there's a lot of or a few theories out there.
Well, I believe that the generally accepted explanation for poltergeist activity, at least by mainstream parapsychology, is that poltergeist, which is a German word that means noisy ghost, basically is the unconscious or subconscious PK or psychokinetic activity caused by an adolescent, usually a female, going through puberty, that has pent up emotions within themselves. They may be very introverted. They may have a lot of peer pressure at school. They keep these energies kind of bottled up inside themselves to the point where it's just like a battery. When you overcharge a battery, eventually the battery might explode. It explodes in all different types of arrays, including, but most often, movement of physical objects. That's why we talked a little bit, maybe extensively, about the case I was involved with in Orland Hills, Illinois. There was a 16-year-old involved there, and everywhere she went, it kind of followed her. It wasn't following her; she was the poltergeist. And she was actually creating that, but not creating it knowingly. She was creating subconsciously. In some cases, going back to the movie Carrie, which I think is a great example of poltergeist with Sissy Spacek. Basically, it was like a mental temper tantrum. When she got mad at somebody or something, she could literally just kind of do that, and something would fly at them. But in most cases, it's more subconscious or unconscious thoughts that create that activity, and it's usually surrounding, a living agent. There are some very other bizarre aspects of the poltergeist phenomena. which actually gets involved with pyrokinetic activity. In the case where people actually start fires, and that kind of goes along with that story Drew Barrymore played in called Firestarter, where that people can actually set fires, and this has been studied in parapsychology as well. Now, this is not something that is easily that you can replicate so easily. I guess it's easier to replicate or study this than it is a spirit or a ghost, because you can't study ghosts under laboratory conditions, but you can bring a subject into a laboratory to study and see if they fit that profile. There are others in the field, and I've seen this on TV, and it kind of, it just might, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit when I see other people saying that, they are trying to say that a poltergeist is actually a ghost because it says it's noisy ghost. So it's actually a spirit causing things to fly around. In all the cases I've been involved with, I've never seen anything levitate or go through a home that was a haunting or ghost phenomena. I have been involved with a couple of poltergeist cases. I was able to see one object in all those cases, possibly fly around, and I can't even be sure that somebody in the room didn't just do that to get attention. I think a lot of mainstream parapsychologists believe that it is simply caused by a living agent, usually adolescent.
Dale, I kind of wanted to piggyback on that. So the living agent's a big, like the big part of it, of the traditional explanation, at least we've had maybe for the past almost 100 years. The Society of Psychical Research in England and in Canada, and ASPR, the American Society for Psychical Research, has been going to these poltergeist cases. And I've been talking about this with my sister Allison on Clubhouse every Friday at 3 p.m. If you guys are Clubhouse members, come and join us for a conversation sometime. And we've been discussing poltergeist basically because I've been really getting into the Philip experiment book over the past couple of months. And so if you got the Philip experiment, is this experiment done by several psychical researchers in Toronto in the 1970s. And you get two people, like one is a psychology professor who comes over from England, comes to Canada to do research, and his wife is a nurse and she's into it too. And they're so interested in poltergeist cases, and they also believe that it is psychokinesis, that this is just people thinking about it with their heads, and that's what's causing it. Like Dale said, the overcharged battery. And Carrie's a good explanation. Carrie really is a good explanation, Dale. That's a great way to put it. And I'm going to steal that next time I have to describe it to somebody. So you have these agents. And so what these guys did in the early 1970s in Toronto, and you can look this up on YouTube, look up the Philip experiment. You can watch a full movie on this.
Was that the one called Conjuring Up Philip?
Yes, that's the book.
That's the book, yeah.
And so what they're doing is they made up a character, whole cloth, named Philip during the English Civil War, and they gave Philip all these kind of traditional ghost story elements. Oh, he committed suicide. He had a lover. His wife hated him. All these kind of things that you generally relate to these emotional things of a ghost story. And they're like, we're going to try to talk to him in a seance. And they did it for a year and nothing happened. And then they tried to do the actual ritual of a seance. And they spent all this time together, this group of like 8 people. And they were trying to, imitate these spiritualist seances, but they were trying to talk to a fictional character. And all of a sudden, the fictional character started talking back with raps on the table, with scratching, with moving the table around. And you see this in the movie. Like, they do this on TV in Toronto, and they don't act like they don't say they're talking to a ghost. They think that they are making this up in their heads. Like, it's the group together creating some kind of spontaneous psychokinesis that is moving the table, that is causing the yes or no. Like, they ask questions, hit once for yes, 2 for no. And it just answers the question. You watch a YouTube video and like a little bit louder, Philip, and you hear the knocking and all their hands are above the table. And you're like, what the heck is going on? And this goes on regularly for a long time. And then they have another group and who who replicates the results, and they made up a French resistance World War II fighter named Lilith. And they do the same kind of thing. And this other group replicates the same kind of results with this Lilith. And they are getting poltergeist activity with a fictional character. And what makes me think that it's more than just psychokinesis, or psychokinesis leads to something more, is that they're doing the experiment at this guy's house for the first year, and then they move to a different place on campus. And the original table they use and stuff, the table and chairs, and they do a session, and then they go to the new place and do a session. And things happen at the new place. But while they're gone, the guy comes home whose house they were doing the experiment at for the first year, and the table is turned over and the chairs are all askew, differently from when they left, and nobody else had been in the house. So Philip was there when they weren't. So you have this non-local poltergeist activity, and that makes it, okay, they're not in the room. They're not consciously causing this to happen. And we were talking about a couple of different poltergeist cases in Milwaukee where in the 1920s, like my sister would know the full details, but she was telling me the story yesterday about this one girl who was sent to a mental asylum for a couple of months. And she was in the asylum, and the poltergeist activity is still happening in the home, even while she's gone. So what makes me think is that this activity might be created by these mental processes, that overcharged battery in the first place. But then what happens when it gets a life of its own? Alexandra David Neal, when she talked about the tulpa creation, when she was in Tibet in the 1920s, she said that they created a tulpa that eventually got a mind of its own and they had to put down. So that's what it kind of made me think of, like, okay, poltergeists, it starts out as this extension of the psyche of a troubled person, and it extends to something that might have some kind of limited, not necessarily sentience, but, it's like an AI or something. That's like stoner wisdom there. That's like you're going all the way out with, the kind of theories. But when you have non-local psychokinesis, that's what it makes me think of.
See, I read that book and I was fascinated by it, and I actually did see the documentary as well. But you got to remember too, what they were doing is they were creating something. They were giving something a personality. They were giving it personality traits. They were giving it a past life, if you will. And it was a collective effort by those around the table, or in the experiment that was doing it. So that could have been very well been like you say, kind of creating something that later on created some poltergeist type activity, which I would agree with. The idea, though, which always intrigued me, is that they created this. This was a non-person. This was not even a living person, and they went in an experiment, which was nobody ever thought about doing something like this, and they got some interesting results at the very end. There's another very interesting case that happened in Enfield, Middlesex, England, investigated by Guy Lyon Playfair and Maurice Gross, called "This House is Haunted," about the family out there that was actually having all types of poltergeist activity, levitations of the the girls being thrown out of their beds and so forth. And what the most unusual thing about that poltergeist case was that the direct voice communication that was coming out of the one of the can't remember her name, which one it was, that was seemed to be the source of it, but it was a very deep Cockney English accent. Of course, they were from England, and you don't see these girls moving their lips. In fact, they were actually tested to see if they could ventriloquize, which they could not, and they kept this up. This deep, gruff voice coming out like from here, and you just see them kind of turn, but their lips never move, but they're talking in full sentences, and they don't even seem. Some of the very easily you can find some of these YouTube videos out there, and Janet, I believe was her name that comes to mind, and basically it was to the point where she's kind of like wondering what's coming out of me at this point. Now, for somebody to talk for that extended period of time, even Maurice Grosse, who was part of the British Society for Psychic Research at the time, said that there was no evidence of sore throat, no scratchy voice, no nothing after the girls continued to talk in their normal voice. So this was something that only one other had ever been investigated, which was the talking mongoose in the Isle of Man.
Geff.
All right, guys. I think we've probably come to the end of this, and I'm sure everybody is tired.
Once you introduce Geff the talking mongoose, people start to turn off. But Dale, I'm with you.
Final thought. Have you noticed that everything gets blamed on teenage girls and menopausal women? We need to research that.
Beth, right there with you.
Just saying.
Well,
if you guys want to do research with menopausal women, send me the results.
Fun. But no, I have to say, this was a very awesome panel, and I very much appreciate every one of you showing up and being here with us. It's been an honor talking with you tonight. And so, does anybody have anything they want to promote or anything coming up that they want to talk about real quick?
Happy birthday, Joe.
What?
Happy birthday, Joe.
Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow is his birthday. So.
Don't forget to turn your clocks forward tonight.
Yeah, we lose an hour tonight.
Yeah, spring forward.
Yeah, and I think we need to, give our hosts Joe and Mark a hand for, and a congratulations on their 100th episode and for putting this together. So thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming in and being with us tonight. We had a really good time and a lot of good talk. I loved it.
Yeah. If anybody wants to, if you're in the Midwest or if you end up in Hawaii or Puerto Rico, please check out AmericanGhostWalks.com and we will give you the best haunted history tour we absolutely can. If you're still staying at home, then go on Amazon Prime and watch Finding Jay, because he's got a really cool movie about how Bigfoot affected him and his life, and the search for it helped define it.
Oh yeah,
that's true. Thanks for that plug, Mike.
Hey, it's always easier when somebody else plugs you.
Then I'll go ahead and plug Ghost Biker Exploration. She's entering her 4th season this year. She's got some exciting events going on that everyone needs to either show up to or tune into, as well as Ghost Biker Garage. So everybody look and tune into Ghost Biker Exploration.
And yes. I'll just jump on the bandwagon as well and say the same thing for Christy with Soul Sisters Paranormal. I mean, they've got some really cool local legends and lores that's coming out. And I may have said that wrong, butchered the title, but I know she's got a couple of those coming out and some really cool investigations, as well as Beth Allen and her podcast that she's got coming up, Wicked Woman and Supernatural Speak.
And Dale, you have a couple of TV appearances coming up, right?
Yes, I do. Actually, I have one coming on, I believe, on the. They may have already passed, actually, but I had, since all the paranormal shows went to Discovery Plus, I've been repeating a lot of my shows on the World's Most Unexplained, which I had 2 episodes on, White House Ghost Flight 191, and also a Paranormal Survivor about a private case that I did. This year, we're going to be going back to Gettysburg again this year, which got a lot of interesting locations, new spots in Gettysburg that I found on the battlefield that we're going to be investigating. And hopefully get up to places up in Nopine, Sanitarium, and perhaps go out and do the Buddy Holly crash site out in Clear Lake, Iowa. But those that can find me on my website at ghostresearch.org.
Cool. Beth, you're the only one left.
Let's see. Since I've been plugged, I'll plug. Hey, my family, Midnight Wolf Attack Productions. We're up at the hill now, up at Waverly Hills. A few others. Got to be definitely one of the most haunted places I've ever been. So follow us on Midnight Wolf Attack Productions, and you can give us a few little insights.
And just thank you to all of the guests who have been watching tonight in the comments below as well. So we just can't do shows like this without people watching. So thank you so much.
Definitely. Yes,
and
we appreciate it much.
To even be on the screen with these people.
Yeah. It's been an honor being on here with you guys. Learned a lot. Didn't get to say a lot, but I was listening in, learning.
Well, that's the whole aspect of it, is to listen, learn, and put any 2 cents you have that can help others.
That's right. And again, thank you for having me on. It's been an honor with all you guys tonight.
Thanks, Jay.
And Tom, you take care.
Thank you, Jay.
I didn't get to plug my stuff.
Oh, what's your stuff?
Tom, everybody go to Tom's house to get the shit scared out of him.
If you guys want a break from the paranormal, check out the Off the Rails podcast. We got tons of comedians on there week to week, national headliners. If you're interested in pop culture, check out the Pop Culture Podcast. And also, if you want to go back to scary movies, I am the assistant director of Wisconsin's largest horror film festival, Twisted Dreams Film Festival, going on June 4th to the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Paranormal Investigators isn't Chris from Paranormal Investigators in Milwaukee works on that.
And Chris House is who I do the Pop Culture Podcast with.
Oh, okay. All right. Fantastic.
Nice. One more thing, Mike. Somebody wanted to say hello to you. Look familiar?
Oh, yeah. That's my old camera. I took that in an investigation in the Fister, and now it's going to find Bigfoot. It better be my camera.
It is. I use it all the time out there. The infrared.
Fantastic. The night vision, the Paris Hilton cam.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks again, everyone.
All right. Thanks for letting me join you guys.
It's
Thank you
been
very much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming in.
Don't forget to watch for us on March 21st coming up, Paraflex.
Yes, Paraflix. The March 21st is their launch.
Happy 100, guys.
Happy
Thanks,
100.
guys.
We are.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.